Beauteous. All right.
Got it.
Go ahead, Nick.
All right, Peaches, we have the lovely Natalie with us. Hi, how are you today?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
We're
Great.
awesome.
Great.
We like to start off every episode by asking, what's up, Peach? So how's your week going? How's the day going? A little gut check.
I mean, the day's great. It's Sunday morning. I'm never this productive on a Sunday. So
Right.
I feel like I got up early. I made a big breakfast, and then I started making some sweet potato brownies for the first time.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I was a little ambitious for right before this. So I was like checking that they're not burning and trying not to explode the kitchen. So I haven't tasted them yet. I can't tell you if they were successful, but.
Oh, well, we're looking forward to hearing how the outcome came. We recently just had like little brownie bites that were made from like black beans.
We're vegan, so.
Yes. Oh, great. So you guys probably have great recipes for this because. Were they good?
I've never tried with
I didn't try
sweet potato, but no, they were good. I thought they were good. Grandma, because
I've baked with beans, but like because we bought those, and I've made like brownies or like little bites with beans before.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. And it wasn't. I didn't think it was bad.
No, it's like it's
Grandma
a good
was not
texture
impressed.
for like Grandma tried them. She was like, "This is
Not
not
into
good."
it. Yeah.
No.
She's like, "Where's my lard? Where's
Right.
my
Yeah. And she's a baker.
No, yeah. Grandma like is not the most emotional person. Her love language, or she shows you that she loves you by baking you things.
Yeah.
So when we went vegan, she's just like, I made you a vegan apple crumble.
I mean, I don't know if you find this though. I feel like vegan baking is one of the easiest things because there's so many easy swaps.
And there's so many like 3 ingredient recipes that are
Yeah,
exactly.
Agreed.
Chia eggs, flax eggs, all about it. I've done a lot of the vegan baking world too.
Yeah. Well, we're super excited to hear how the sweet potato goes. I've never did a dessert with sweet potatoes, but we love sweet potatoes. Mm-hmm. So
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah. Great.
Amazing. So we'll get started. For people who have never heard of Natalie before, do you want to give a little rundown of who you are, what you do, what you're all about, all of the good stuff?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Natalie DeCleve. My business name is Natty Style. And that started because Natty was my nickname growing up. And Natty means, by dictionary definition, dapper and well-dressed. So when I became a stylist, it was kind of a natural fit. Yeah. So that's been my Instagram name from the beginning. And I essentially work with private clients as a personal stylist and have since 2009. So I work with both men and women. Prior to that, I was in high fashion doing PR and sales at Diane von Furstenberg, Rufus Albemarle, Albemarle of London, and Kiki de Montparnasse. So I did a bunch of events and PR and sales for those companies, and kind of decided in 2009 that I wasn't totally fulfilled. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, so I left my job just with the idea of clearing my space to figure out what that next step would be. And I was kind of in that space. I also wanted to make money. So I thought, what's one thing that I can do without having another boss, without signing a contract, without figuring anything else out right now? Well, I can help people edit their wardrobes. So I was like, let me just see if there's a demand for, organizing and editing your closet. And then from there, I realized that, well, then people want to fill it with things. So why don't I use my styling experience to help them shop? And so what started as a total like filler, move, make some cash in the meantime, really snowballed and became my full-time career.
Wow.
So yeah.
I feel like there's so many like divine timing things in your story, or even like down to your name, like having the right name and like it just being so suited to what you've been passionate about in your life, which is so cool. And then I think it's, first of all, so badass to just leave a job, like to leave a comfy job because it's not serving you, without kind of knowing exactly what you have next or even what you want to do next, and like taking the risk and the leap to just create that space, because that's not an easy decision to make. And then you kind of just landed upon what you were supposed to be doing. Like, that's pretty cool. Like,
thank you. It was really scary. I mean, this was a million years ago now too. This was 2009. So It was the middle of the recession. Everybody thought I was insane. I had a cushy job and a cool job. I got to travel for work all the time. And
social media wasn't what it is today.
Yeah.
No, it was a totally different world. And, but I kind of figured, if you can make it during that time, you can make it anytime. And yeah, it definitely felt very Kismet. And I think like the sort of through line in my career and my life has always been kind of like follow your gut and don't necessarily do what makes sense. So that felt true in that moment too, where it didn't make sense to quit my job in the middle of recession. It didn't make sense to start a business that was based on people having expendable income, but that's what felt right, and I was looking to use the power of fashion to build self-confidence and use it for what I was drawn to it for. And the things about it that felt so fulfilling as opposed to just using it as a tool for sales, and previously just kind of driving a brand's end goal of selling. Whereas now I was able to work with individual people and really build self-confidence and find out what they needed from their personal style and how that could kind of help them voice who they were in the world.
Yeah. I think, I've always been someone that expresses myself through my style. Like I've had many different versions of my like when I was in middle school it was very different, but it was still very important to me. I've always been someone that expresses how I feel on the inside, on the outside, which is what I love about style. And I think it can be such a powerful thing. What's your relationship with style been like throughout your life? When did you know that was like a thing that you were passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, very much similar to you. We have videos of me as a kid with like 35 bows in my hair and so many accessories, and the more the merrier. And I also remember, like in college, I went to school in North Carolina. I grew up in California. I went to school in North Carolina, and I remember like getting dressed and wearing a headscarf out to the nightclub one night, and I had like these like burgundy bell-bottom jeans, or not even jeans, they were corduroys, burgundy bell-bottom corduroys, and like a headscarf on. And I was like, I can't wait to move to New York City or to move to somewhere where I can express myself in a way that like, feels great no matter what. Because in North Carolina, everybody's kind of like, what are you doing? We're all wearing flip-flops. Like it was just not the vibe. My friends were great and it was super fun and supportive, but I remember that moment just being like, I can't wait to be in a place where that can be
I remember
expressed.
We would have that same thought all the time.
Totally relate.
Yeah, because we grew up in the suburbs of Connecticut, and we would have I remember and I would wear in middle school. We're twins, and in middle school that was me going through my I want to be an individual. Like don't define me by the fact that I'm a twin. And so I would wear these like neon anything, glitter anything, like anything to stand out, anything that caught my eye I would buy.
Yeah,
and that was subconscious. I didn't realize why I was doing it. And everybody would always be like, there was one time I wore tutu to school, which was pretty intense.
Brilliant. How old were you?
That must have been like 7th grade. So
great time to be in a tutu. I love it.
Yeah, like I think that's what 13
hopefully
or 12.
With combat boots or something.
Probably.
Lindsay had these construction boots that
were heeled
construction boots, and
I would wear them with like a long bright red bozo red flannel, so I looked like the most feminine construction worker you could have ever imagined.
I feel like I'd wear that today. That's great.
So yeah,
and our mom was just like, because she would go shopping with us when we were young and like be like, that's what you want? Yeah, that's it. And Lynn was like, yes, thank you.
And God bless her for letting you do it, because that's so important too. Yeah. I also remember doing that when I was probably like 7. My dad would always drag me around to like Home Depot and Sears and like boring errands, Yeah. And when it was like, my mom was like, I'm doing something else. Take her on your errands. So he brought me to Sears once. I think we were getting a new washer and dryer or something extremely boring. And on the way back out of the store, he was like, okay, as a consolation prize, you can pick anything you want from the clothing section. And I was like,
fabulous.
This right here, this neon pink leotard spandex full outfit with like a crop top that tied.
Amazing.
So like it had spandex underneath so you don't see a belly because you're only 7. Like
right.
I love that. It was
that. Amazing.
Yeah.
My whole family was like, we need sunglasses to look at you. Like what are you doing?
Yes, that was me. My entire middle school career. It was great. Yeah. And I remember my dad was always, because my mom would be like, are you sure you want to wear that? And then my dad would always be like, hey, as long as her vagina's not out,
her
really
bits
don't
are covered.
Yeah.
Great. That's like, a good rule of thumb.
I was like, good. Yeah. I'm glad we agree.
That's great.
Yeah. Style's so important.
I mean, I think everyone goes through that phase of life where you're just like, experience. Like I remember when being young and being like, how do people not know who they are? And then reaching a particular age and being like, I don't know, do I like this? Does this feel right? It's like I think it's a rite of passage to kind of experiment in that way.
Totally.
And I'm sure we go through that. Like styles change, new things come into play, like even nowadays, and so we're always kind of dealing with that on some sort of level. A question that I have is like, what questions do you ask someone to like gauge what their style is, or what things that you pick out for them, or like is it have a lot to do with their personality when you are working with a client?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always ask a bunch of questions when I first meet someone, including what is a style icon or idol that you really admire? Are there any examples of people whose style you love? And also, is there a message that you'd like to convey through your style? But honestly, those questions are one tiny element. Usually what happens is as soon as I meet someone, I am able to just kind of pick up more what would work for them and what they're looking for based on our conversation, based on their personality, based on their lifestyle. And I also think that's like one of those things that comes with time, like having spent a lot of time with people and having been doing this for a long time and being a generally pretty intuitive person. I've always loved people. I love working with people. I try to really level with people. You know, I think that's something that sets me apart from a lot of stylists is I try to make it a really approachable experience. And it's very much about bringing out who they are as opposed to allowing me to show off some, you know, trends that I really want to show that I'm able to pull together or whatever. So yeah, that's a huge part of how I dress someone is finding out who they are and what they need before we even get started.
Yeah. And were you always like, were you self-taught or did you get like, in terms of learning how to style and like what's good and what's not? Or did you ever take like a class or something? I don't even know if there's such a thing.
At the time, there were not. I think there might be more now with, you know, social media and all the online options that we have. So yeah, it was completely self-taught. Like it was very much, it happened by accident. And then I was kind of fumbling along until I figured out my process. You know, I went through different phases where I had more of a questionnaire, a more structured process. And then as I kept going, it became more and more intuitive and sort of settled in. And in terms of the styling itself, like how to put things together, it was completely intuitive. Like it was, you know, you're always kind of teaching yourself if you're already interested in that world, right? Like you're doing the research by reading magazines, by shopping, by being in stores, by just paying attention, you know, like to me, I always say my number one inspiration is living in New York City. Like the street style that you see here is everything. Like I all of a sudden, you know, what you see in magazines, anything goes and people pull it off so well. And, you know, there's so many people who really have like creativity and vision. And it's also functional and in the everyday. So of course it's amazing reading magazines and watching celebrity style and all of those things. But really what's interesting when you're dressing people for everyday life is seeing people in their everyday lives, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how do you pull off this trend, but also wear it to brunch in Soho?
Right.
As opposed to like on a red carpet, which, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm not on a red carpet every day. So.
Yeah,
no,
same,
not quite yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Someday.
I remember when I don't think we had moved there yet, but we I think we were visiting, like we took a day trip in with some friends to the city, and we were walking down the street, and there was somebody that had this, because like we were walking with one of our friends, and he's like, there's fashion and then there's high fashion, and like I'm sure we'll see examples today. And so
who are you walking with?
it was Zach.
Okay.
And so we walked past a bunch of people that like looked really nice and had like very like on trend style, and then there was somebody that had like neon or like metallic leggings, like a huge fluffy jacket, big sunglasses, and like I don't know, they were just like very extra, and then we walked past them, and our friend was like, that's high fashion. Like they're risky, they're bold, that's that's high fashion. And one of like what you were saying, one of my favorite things about New York is you have that, you could wear whatever it is that you feel most you in, and nobody's gonna look at you sideways.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely gives a lot of freedom and a lot of inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
I wish like, because you were, like I wasn't like, in North Carolina, or even like we were more artsy people in our schools, like younger friend group, and I wish more places were just like, oh, less sensitive to different articles or styles.
Yeah.
Right, because it comes across as judgment a lot of times,
right.
And really it's just people feeling uncertain about themselves, and then it becomes a
mm-hmm.
projection onto you. And, I think that happens also as adults, right? Like
mm-hmm.
you meet people all the time who are really frightened to wear certain things because they're worried what their friend group would say, what their husband would say, what would people think if I wear this thing that I don't usually wear?
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be really freeing to have somebody say, it's okay to wear that thing. Like you actually look amazing in it, and,
mm-hmm.
and it gives people like sort of that validation sometimes that they need to just have somebody give them the opportunity to play.
Right. Yeah.
And to think outside the box.
Yeah. I mean, what you wear on your outside is your most, is an expression of yourself, and and it can really invoke confidence, like a power suit, like it can change the game for you if you show up feeling good in what you're wearing and feeling confident. And so I guess a question for you, because you like see this all the time, is like, why is it so important to find your style and feel good in your clothes? Like, why are clothes so important?
Yes. I always say it's like as soon as you're able to automate that and feel really confident in that, you don't have to waste the energy on it. So if you know that you look and feel great, you can pay attention to everything in your actual world and not have this like internal fear. If you're walking around feeling uncomfortable in your skin, uncomfortable in what you look like, you're on a podcast looking at the way that your sweater's sitting, or you're talking to somebody and thinking, oh gosh, like, does my hair look okay? Or is this color weird? Is this person thinking this about me because of the way I'm dressed? I should have worn this. I should have worn that. I don't look good enough, whatever. And, if you're in a business situation, you're in a romantic situation, you're in a social situation, anything, you don't want to be worried about that. You want to just have that automated, know that you look great and feel strong, then face in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, I think going back to middle school, going back to that sort of foundational time, I remember being in middle school and high school and feeling that way when I had a great outfit on. I felt good all day. And when I had an outfit that I felt self-conscious in, it would ruin my day.
Right.
It's like kind of all you're thinking about.
Yeah.
And I think that carries on, it's kind of still true.
Mm-hmm. I
agree. Yeah, it's a powerful tool.
I agree. Absolutely. And then I kind of want to go back a little bit and ask you, like, what specifically was it that made you, because we keep saying that you kind of were like, I kept fumbling along and like just until I found like this process that worked for me. But what gave you the courage to sort of really take this risk and make the jump to start something new? Mm-hmm. Was it just like, I have to do it? Like, was it just like I have to do it because I'm unhappy and like I feel like this is just like, this was what feels right? Or was there like a support system that you had? Like, what that gave you the courage to take the risk, courage to take that jump?
Sure. I think it was a combination of factors, like it always is. I definitely knew that I had more to offer. That was like my drive in my job. I just felt like, even though it seemed really cool on the outside, there were so many checks and balances to actually be creative in that role that I felt like I wasn't being useful, And I felt stunted creatively. I started writing a blog at the same time. So, and this was again like when blogs were super relevant.
Yeah.
And so that was just a creative outlet. And then, leaving the job, I had originally thought I had been looking for other jobs, and I realized until I removed all the distraction, I was never going to actually figure out anything new. So the courage was partially that. I felt like I can keep spinning my wheels, or I can make a jump and do something. I also was pretty young at the time. I was sharing my apartment with my boyfriend in Brooklyn at the time, so finances were easier. And my support system in terms of our relationship was really great. He was a very outside of the box thinker. I was super supportive. He was an actor too, so he was like, "Listen, I work a weird job and I make it work,"
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think it was, it was having him on my side. It was having my friends on my side to kind of say, okay, well, what are the things that this was actually a really interesting conversation that we had that I think everybody should think about when you're thinking about making some kind of jump and you're not sure what are the weird things that you're embarrassed to say make you happy? Like, what would you actually love to do if you weren't embarrassed to say it, or if money were no object? And one of the things for me was I wanted to be more vocal and I wanted to have a voice. So whether that's through writing or through TV, I was like, I love that. Like, being on camera for me is play. I love like entertaining. I love speaking in front of groups. Like, none of that is intimidating to me. It's just fun and thrilling and like a challenge, and something that I always felt came naturally. So I was like, okay, how do I create a personal brand? And that's kind of where that was born. And had I not had that conversation, I don't think I would have admitted that to myself, because, growing up, your parents were like, okay, what are the office jobs that you're going to have? Like, how are you going to make money?
100%.
Where are you going to get your 401k? How are you going to figure those things out? And then when you start to realize and you start to see other people, and it's much more common now, I think, than it was ever before, but working for yourself, working from home, once you see that that's possible, all of a sudden it's like this expander for you that you start to realize it's even possible for yourself and think about how you can make that happen.
Yeah.
That's like such a really good question.
It reminds me of, we had someone else on the podcast who talked about finding your life purpose, and part of it was like, what is your superpower combined with how do you want to see the world be a better place, and like combining those two things. And it's just kind of it's just kind of like another way of looking at where your talents are and where like what comes naturally to you and what feels good, combined with what do you want your objective and your mission to be. Because like everyone wants to make an impact and everyone wants to see the world be better than how they found it.
Yeah, be a part about making the world a better place.
And I mean, I think we all have more than one hidden talent, and I think asking that question, or more than one like superpower, and asking the question like, what are the things that you are embarrassed to say that you like, or that you're really good at, that give you fire? Because also like forces you to be honest with yourself and be like, what am I actually good at? Like, what are and I think maybe the things that you're hiding are better to look at, because it's like tapping into a hidden market, like,
and it's like hidden within yourself. Let's like not be afraid to pull out the things that maybe society makes us feel weird about, because like you shouldn't have to hide that side of yourself, whatever it is.
And whatever it is what your magic is,
right?
Like, we all have these weird little things, and sometimes if they don't fit the mold, you don't realize what a power that is. But how many times have you met someone that you're like, they have this weird ability to blankety blank, right. When you're tapped into that, that's the magic. Like, that's the power of all of it. And I mean, for me, it was, I think, finding a way to be more creative within fashion and have like sort of a start and an end that I could feel proud of too. I've always been, I mean, as a kid, I was like, I did every possible arts and crafts ever for like a week, and then I would lose interest and move on to the next thing. So I was like, this week I'm an enameler. Like, I'm going to find a kiln. I'm going to fire up all these things, and I need to invest in all the dust and all these things. My parents were like, okay, go take a class, do your thing. The next week I'm like, now I'm light stenciling. I'm making handmade cards for everyone. I'm going to sell them. It's going to be a big business. I had all these ideas. And then as an adult, you're kind of like taught that you need to get serious and stay focused. And while I think that's definitely helpful, I think that for someone like me, I did need to find what I could remain interested in. I also think that part of my powers or my like what keeps me going is being allowed to get interested in something new all the time. And so now what that is for me is I still write. So I have, again, like a start to finish, I get to like have a creation, but also working with clients. I'm meeting new people all the time. So that feeds my need for novelty, you know, and like each person is a new challenge.
Yeah. I think I love how like everything you really allow yourself to be playful and experiment and not be afraid to
different things in life.
Go different directions.
Yeah.
And it's making me, you had said, it's okay to get started and not have everything figured out, not have every single detail known of like how it's supposed to be, because things change and like your desires change, especially if you're someone who likes challenge, like to try different things and like be stimulated in different ways. And so that's something that I think keeps coming up on the podcast is like, you don't need to have every single little thing figured out before you like start your new endeavor, or like you have to be open to ebb and flow and change. And I think that's really what seems to have led to a lot of your success, is that you're just like, I think I need to do this right now. And then you try it and maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't, and maybe it's the thing that, you know, this process of which you work with clients, that seemed to like be how it came to be.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think that's very true. I think that a lot of times perfectionists will get hung up in not starting a new project at all because you're worried about it being perfect. And, you know, my weakness is probably follow through. Sometimes I'm not as detail oriented in my projects and things. And so that helped me in this situation, because I was like, I'm just going to start. I'm just going to try it. And, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And in this case, it did work. And I found the thing that I could be a perfectionist about, you know, because I was consistently interested and I had such a vested interest in my clients and a personal attention. So, yeah, I think not being afraid to jump in is for sure helpful.
Yeah. I also feel like when you have access, or when you've tried all of these different things, you have, I don't know, you're like building up skill sets and rosters and perspective in your head that you can take into the thing that you do decide to be a perfectionist about, or just like in life. Like, I don't know, do you ever use any of like the things that you tried as inspiration to styling?
Oh, that's a good question. I think probably indirectly, just again in that willingness to try things. So, you know, that translates into, okay, this outfit looks perfect, but what if we open the sweater and button the buttons differently? Or, you know, what if we try this with a totally unexpected boot, or things like that. And yeah, I think there has to be like, and again, I think that's the benefit of working with someone else in general, you know, whoever that person is you get this third party objective view of who you are, right? You're not just looking in the mirror and saying, well, this is the way I always wear things, so this is how I would put it together. You have someone else saying, well, this is what would actually look great on you. Why don't you try this? And so you get kind of a new viewpoint.
Yeah. Okay, so what would you say what has been the hardest part about building your business? Like, what's been a challenge? What's been the biggest challenge about like starting and keeping it going?
I think in the beginning it was obviously finding clients. So, you know, I found a lot of clients through my network of friends and social network and people that I had met through my job. And luckily that snowballed pretty naturally, but it wasn't immediate. You know, there was still some time in there where I just had to have faith that it would come through. And I think the challenge now for me is I have a great client base, knock on wood, and I feel like, you know, I've been very grateful for that. And the part that I spend less time on is the social media side. So for me, that's never been as much of a focus. And I know it probably should be now more than ever. And because I sort of raised my business in a different time period, I haven't really invested in that. And so, I think that people care about that more now than they did before. So I think that can be a bit of a challenge.
100%.
Social media is kind of like, sometimes it can feel like an iCloud, it's like no one really knows how to work it sometimes.
Totally. And it shifts all the time, and you're
All
like,
the
what? There's a
time.
new algorithm, and like, I'm busy. Like, I'm not paying attention.
What social media is supposed to be like this tool to help us grow, but when it's shifting so often, like as soon as you nail it down or like have some sort of rhythm, it changes again.
Yeah.
And you're like, bummer.
Right.
Do you ever outsource like things like that, or like have people, like, do you have a team that helps you with everything, or it's just you?
I should. It's just me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a good advice that we get a lot from podcast guests, it's like outsource when like outsource, and like when you know that you're not good at something, like give that task to someone else so that you can better put your energy into things that you know that you're really good at and really in tune with.
I think it's also just like what you did with your job, like clearing, even if you're not like bad at it, like clearing space so that you can really focus on what you want to and be good at what you want to be good at.
Totally true.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know like what the psychology is behind like styling, and like, because as you like, and even when Lindsay's a producer sometimes, and I remember
sometimes,
not sometimes, she's a producer, and then sometimes you'll go on sets and you've said like, I've seen talent in something that they don't feel comfortable or confident in, and like it affects the outcome,
like their
performance, and I feel like that's like a way, I don't know,
yeah.
do you deal with that a lot, and like do you notice any psychology bits of people in their clothes? I think it would be interesting to know more about the psychology behind that.
Yes, and it's funny you asked that, because I always am like, I should have been a psychology major, because I was always, when people would say like, what are the things that really light you up, I would always say, what makes people tick? And I didn't know how to define that. I didn't know that meant like sociology or psychology, but I was so driven by people's motivations and how they reacted to things, and seeing how people could manipulate each other, and how actions could change, and how you could put different masks on. And, all of that is just fascinating to me. And it's a huge part of styling for sure. I think, you have to kind of read a person and where they are, understand how comfortable they are in their body, in their skin, in their, everything. Find out how fashion can help them versus throw them backwards. So sometimes if you put somebody in something that they're really not ready for, it can have the opposite effect. So you have to make sure that you're understanding a person.
Yeah.
And again, I think it comes down to that intuition too, and building that intuition, just paying attention to who you're talking to, and being able to read those things, and then adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
Speak to them accordingly, take them to certain stores accordingly, try different styles accordingly. Like, everything is very personal.
Yeah, but it's like, it's personal, and then it's also, because I was also thinking like not taking it too personally, and like being aware of like, because I remember like if a client of yours is like, I don't like this, you don't take it personally, like, well, I picked it out for you. Yeah. So it's like, it's all about awareness, and like knowing that it's a personal experience for one person, but it's like, it's just all about what's making them feel good, and like, it's not about you, it's about the clothes. And
for sure. I also feel like it can be a balance, kind of flipping it back on the person that's like being dressed, because there was a time that we had a photo shoot.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the same thing.
And we had a very specific idea of like what we wanted to be wearing for the photo shoot, and we like hired a wardrobe person, and she just like brought things that weren't quite what we wanted, and it was a bit out of my comfort zone, and like it just like didn't feel great in it. And I remember that the photographer was like, I feel like if you just like put it on and make it fashion, it's fashion. And I'm like, to a certain degree, yes, but there's a time and a place to experiment with your wardrobe. And at the time when like, I'm not the talent all of the time, and I was like, I'm like, if I'm telling you I'm uncomfortable in what I'm wearing, it's like time to take it off.
Right. Well, it's that old adage, are the clothes wearing you, or are you wearing the clothes? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt that way when I was modeling too. I always had such a strong opinion about what I was wearing. There were so many times when they would put me in things that made me look terrible.
Yeah.
And I would be like, I know what I should be wearing. I know how I should do my makeup. Like, I'm in the wrong seat here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's like, and I was like, this is an interesting lesson because I think there are times when you should, because if you feel uncomfortable in the clothes that you're in, but you like the clothes themselves, like, it's like, why do I feel uncomfortable? Let's like make sure that I'm not just feeling uncomfortable because I'm afraid of what people are going to think of me.
right.
Versus like, this just isn't for me. Like, this isn't my personality. This isn't, and I mean, from the beginning of this podcast, I'm like not afraid to wear a wacky thing. It was just like that. I thought it was like,
It wasn't you.
Yeah, it wasn't me. It wasn't like flattering the things that I love about myself. It wasn't like highlighting. Yeah, it was just a wild
Just goes to
time.
show how important, like, how you present yourself, how important that is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and I remember like being on that photo shoot and like you having like switching from being like, okay, now I have to go into producer mode, and like being like, yeah, we need to change. It was just that person was new, I think.
Well, yeah, and
green,
I
a little green.
I felt in a way I felt kind of bad because I was kind of, not that I took over, but I was also like, we're paying a lot of money to be here, and I'm gonna make sure that I get as much of what I need out of this. And and so I kind of like went sifting through because I started like styling for us. And I'm sure that's not like, I know that that's not like the proper etiquette, but I was like, oh, we're here one day, I'm the client today, and this is what, like, if I were in the other person's shoes, I would have been handling that situation completely differently anyways. And I don't know, yeah, it was a good learning lesson that day.
Yeah, and it happens. I think it is always, you really do have to make sure that you're paying attention to the client because they are paying for a service, and it is a personal thing. And some people have no opinion, and some people have very strong opinions. And then it's also recognizing that you are also hired for your opinion. So, in it's figuring out a way to present that it's helpful and not a hindrance or a criticism or anything like that.
Yeah.
Would you say that you work well under pressure? Or do you ever show up to like a photo shoot or something, and then there's nothing that they like, and then we have to like completely pivot and like try something else?
Oh gosh. Well, I don't do photo shoots anymore. I do only private clients.
Okay.
Largely because I don't love schlepping, and it was just
it
was totally different.
It's a
beast. And again, there was a different meaning behind it and a different motivation. So,
sure.
I didn't find it as rewarding and fulfilling because I was still selling and I was still trying to execute someone's vision. But I did have one nightmare styling experience that has haunted me for the rest of my life. It's the worst day ever styling. I was on a shoot for Marie Claire, and we had originally been told the model sizes, the details of the shoot. One of the things they said were bright colors, really like pop colors, and some other facts. I can't remember exactly. So I show up there the day of the shoot, and they're like, actually, the model is, well, she didn't even say it, but she was like a good 2 sizes bigger, pretty much, than what I had pulled. And we weren't allowed to use any red because it was competing with the logo of the brand that we were working with. And I had pulled so much red and pink and like things that were close in that family.
Wow.
So I all of a sudden was like, like, I have nothing. I mean, this is like horrendous. I don't have enough material. I just don't have enough, and I'm already on the shoot. So I was in total panic. I had one assistant, and I called my like girlfriend who was in town visiting, and I was like, can you please come and be a second assistant and just like go to my apartment? I was like, bring me this, like bring me all these things, go by Bloomingdale's, get me these, like all these things. And she came and helped, but even still, it was such a, like, I mean, we had a time crunch, and it was an emergency that they ended up having to call a second stylist, which was like humiliating. The worst day ever, worst experience ever. I felt so bad. But what can you do? You're already there.
Yeah. I feel like everybody has one of those stories where you are running around with your head cut off and like
Everything's going wrong.
Especially working in advertising. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, every shoot day, I feel like I just run around with my head cut off. And, like, I haven't been on a shoot day in a long time. Like, I haven't been doing that. But, like, they can be, but they are very
and especially
intense.
if you're young, right? Like, I was probably 23 at the time or something, and I didn't have any experiences like that, and I was just like, I'm never going to be hired again. This is the end of my career. I'm the worst stylist on the planet.
No.
I just was so upset, and here I am with a successful career way later to say, like, those days are going to happen and you're going to survive them.
I mean,
and to this day, I'm still friends with the editors that were on that job.
Yeah.
And, they've contacted me for other things. And I've been like, do you remember that day the way that I remember that day?
Yeah.
Well, honestly, like, if a producer sees, like, how resourceful, like, because if it sounds, I would imagine you weren't told the red rule.
No,
so that's not your fault. And, like, that's a producer's fault, or whoever was in charge of, like, talking to you. That's, like, and, like, so there should be some leniency there of, like, she didn't have all the rules and regulations before she went out and, like, did the job she was supposed to do.
But I think it also, like, for me, just taught me how much more prepared you need to be. You always have to be prepared for that bomb. Like, that bomb can come in any way, shape, or form. And ever since then, like, even when it's a personal styling client, like, they can come into the biggest dressing room ever. Like, there are so many options because I learned that you have to have more than you think you're going to need.
Yeah.
Editing is important. It's got to be edited for sure. You can't throw too much stuff out there or it's confusing, but you also have to kind of imagine the variables and be prepared for anything.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, I'm sure that experience gave you like good, like, being able to stay calm in the midst of a storm, like,
learning how to prepare
and, like,
for the unpreparable.
And, like, even, like, now you have the idea of, like, any other, if you were, like, ever going on a shoot again with somewhere with a label, you're gonna be, like, thinking about the design of the magazine and how, like, the clothes pop up. It's, like, adds another layer of, like, and, like you said, you were young. It's just, like, I think everyone has to go through, like, I have memories of just being, like, sitting in a situation and being like, can anything else happen? Like, like, I would just, like, want to crawl in
at the end of that day.
Like, it's just, like, it's kind of a rite of passage that, things are gonna go waves up and down. There's gonna be moments where you're stressed, but it doesn't mean that you're not in the right place at the right time, learning the thing that you need to be learning in that moment.
Yes. And my secret for a lot of things in life, and that's a good experience too, is to either zoom in or zoom out. Usually, like, one of those things is going to help you from panicking or spiraling.
Yeah.
So whether that's zooming out and realizing, big picture, does this shoot actually matter? Does this is just one day. We're going to get through it. There's going to be so many more experiences in my career. It's all going to be fine in the grand scheme of things. Like, today, it's all I can focus on because I'm on the set with 10 people looking at me and trying to whatever. But if you zoom out, it's not going to be like that forever. This is not your only magazine you've ever worked for. This is not, the only thing. And then alternatively, sometimes it's zooming in and it's saying, like, especially in a personal experience, well, what are the things that I'm really happy about right now? Or, what are the things that really matter? Let's just look closely. Like, do I have all of my needs met? Am I actually, in a functioning relationship? Do I have amazing friends? Or I don't know. It's like finding something really tactile and small that you can grab onto, so you're not kind of floundering and upset about something.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
I love that idea. And it's not the zoom in, zoom out. I think is just, like, a really interesting way to, like, frame your mind,
and, like, a grounding practice, like, if you will.
And it makes me think about another question that we like to ask, which is, how does mental and emotional health and wellness play a role in your everyday life and your career and your business?
Hugely. Yeah. I spend a lot of time taking care of myself, I think. I think the concept of self-care, I'm like, thank God everybody's on board with this, because it's, like, the thing that has kept me sane. And mostly for me, it's moving my body. I really have to, stay active, do something in the morning that kind of makes me feel productive right away. Or I'm a Gemini, I've got a lot of energy. I feel like I'll start to just be like, I'm not productive enough if I hadn't done something already by 9 a.m. or whatever. And then eating well for my body too just gives me that strength. It's kind of like the dressing thing. Like if I feel strong and healthy, then I feel like I'm in a good place to tackle the rest of my day. And I've been through some health scares and some like gut issues that were really bad and thyroid issues. And it essentially, it makes it difficult to do anything else. Right. And now that I've kind of gotten through it, I'm so grateful for it every time I have a slice of bread. Like every time I have a huge nourishing meal and I don't have a stomach ache, I'm like, this is amazing. Like I can button my jeans. I'm not so crazy bloated. Like I don't have constant anxiety. And, because for me too, it was a lot of not listening to my gut in my personal life and things that were going on, coupled with some things that were probably physical triggers. And it just manifested, like it completely became a physical problem that was originally mostly emotional and spiritual. So what I found during that time when I felt so hopeless for so long and like, will I ever be able to eat normally again? And I was down to 105 pounds. I was like tiny. And I felt so like everything was painful. And so you're in that place where you're kind of like, I don't know if I'll ever be normal again. Like I used to eat so much and I used to be so healthy and now I can't, and I can't even like see a way out. And the way that I found my way out of it was definitely partially physical, like I took the right supplements and I did whatever, but it was also really spiritual. It was really like, Kundalini yoga was great for me. Breath work was great for me. And just honing in on my spirituality and reconnecting with self and what mattered was huge, huge, huge. And I went deep in the like bohemian woo-woo. I went to Costa Rica for a month. I did like
amazing.
A lot of meditation. And it was so transformative for me that now it's kind of like, how do I incorporate that in my daily life all the time? And how do I listen to my gut is my number one thing. Like, what do you, if there's like one tiny little voice that's saying something is wrong, I try to listen to it right away and say, where's it coming from? Like, how can I address that right now rather than pushing it away or saying, I'm going to stay in this job or this relationship or whatever, just because it seems right on the surface and I'm scared of what else is out there. And, not making those little voices become big voices that become something worse down the road.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That was such a powerful story.
Yeah.
And I feel like something that's been coming up for me, like in my life and in my circle, is the message that like if one thing, so mental, emotional, spiritual and physical health, all super important, and if one is off, the others fall out of place so quickly. And one thing, one thing that I think, or one part of the triangle that I think is left behind a lot or forgotten or not understood is how like your spiritual health can affect your physical health, or how your emotional health can affect your physical health. They are so intertwined. And it's like all of a sudden, like you're not taking care of the things that you can't touch, but then your body, your vessel can fall apart on you so easily in different ways. Like maybe it's acne, maybe it's bloating, maybe it's like, I don't like fatigue. Like there's it manifests itself in different ways. And then of course, if you like go a long time without taking care of it or starting to do the healing and stuff, then you have to really create space to like get back in balance. And like balance is so important.
Yeah. So, the longer you go without it, the longer it takes to recover.
Yeah. So that's pretty.
It was making me think of like we're talking about how your demeanor and your mood and your confidence can change by like what you wear. But I'm like, the first thing that your soul is wearing is your body. So
100%.
If like you don't take care of and like make sure that it feels good, then it'll be the same effect if like they put you in a weird like thing that you don't look good in on set, and you're trying to like look good for your picture, or you're trying to like show up for like a good
analogy
thing. I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
The first thing that you wear is your body, so you want to like make sure that it feels the way that you want it to feel and that you feel good in your own skin.
Yeah. Mind, body, soul.
Yes. No, that's very true. And I think that that can go in two different ways too. So sometimes that might make you push yourself really hard to stay in a certain physical shape. And to some extent that can be amazing and great and be motivating to stay like healthy and in shape. And then sometimes it goes too far, right? Because your vision of what your body should look like maybe is not the healthiest. And So I think it's kind of marrying that what's in the mirror and what's in your head, and really realizing what is real, and being able to fall in love with that, and own that, and wear that with confidence.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. Something that Lindsay's been saying a lot recently is like, I just want to treat my body right. I want to move it. Like, I move it to be healthy. I want to put healthy things in my body, and I want to do the things that I need to do to keep myself like feeling good. And however that manifests in how I look in the mirror, like whatever happens on the output like side, then I'm happy as long as as long as I'm treating it,
as long as and it's so hard because everybody's different. So like I've been feeling, I was like, I want to get a nutritionist because like what does my body specifically need? And like I've been like getting really into herbalism, like how kind of like, I'm like, I want to grow my own things because how can I trust that the grocery store isn't getting it from like I'm going down a whole journey in that sense. But like,
I worry about that too. It's so hard.
Yeah. And like, but one thing that I learned, like I've been really into beet juice lately because apparently it clears out, it does something good for your blood. And then it also really clears out the toxic waste in your gut, which I'm like, let's get all that shit out of there.
Literally.
Because gut health is so important. I never realized like growing up how important like gut health is, where everything else stems, like fatigue and all of like acne, everything. And like cancer, like all of this bad stuff can stem from your gut health, emotional, like what you're saying, everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much serotonin in your gut. I can't remember what the actual numbers are, but there's a reason that if your digestion is off, you feel depressed, or you feel sad, or you feel, like moody. And it's not just because you have to go to the bathroom. It's like there's a lot of physical and psychological things that are tied together for sure.
Yeah. Love it. As we're like kind of creeping up on our hour mark here, is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you want to touch on before we move into the Peachy Clean segment?
I mean, we've talked about it, but I think just follow your gut. I think following your gut like has been the through line through my entire life, both my personal life and relationships. A lot of people have been wondered why I might have broken up with someone or, chosen a different path or whatever. And those decisions have always been right. And they've not made sense on the outside sometimes, but if you really feel something, to listen to it. And career-wise, even before styling, I made so many decisions in my career that were gut-based versus what made sense linearly in terms of a linear trajectory for your career. I mean, the first example, my first serious fashion job was Diane von Furstenberg. And I had an offer for Stuart Weitzman at the same time. And the Stuart Weitzman offices were like gray cubicles. It was super serious. It was a little bit more traditional, but they offered me the PR job that I wanted. Like, it was exactly what I said I wanted. The people were amazing. It was a great salary. Like, it 100% just on paper looked like the right choice. And then I interviewed at Diane von Furstenberg, and they had a different opening that was not what I wanted, but I loved the environment. They had purple carpet. They had a spiral staircase. There were original Warhols of DVF all over the walls.
Oh, sounds awesome.
And I was like, this is the place that I need to be, and it just felt right. And I didn't know what the lessons were going to be, but I ended up learning so much in that job, not just about how to work in an office place or, how to do my job as a PR person or a salesperson, but really like the interpersonal experiences that I had were absolute gold. I mean, working in the meatpacking district and the time when it was at its highlight, and, working with such creative people, and like just the opportunities that were afforded by this network, based on this network, were worth absolutely everything. And so I never regretted it. And I never would have known that those lessons would have been what I got from that, and I kept kind of choosing those things along the way. Again, like when I chose Kiki de Montparnasse, it was because of the environment. The people were so interesting, and it ended up, giving me a chance to travel and do all kinds of other interesting things that had nothing to do with my skill set learned in the job, really. It was and then eventually that led to me being unhappy in that role and forcing me into what I'm doing now. Had I not chosen that, maybe it wouldn't have been as obvious,
I love that. I think that And especially something that is helpful, I think, for people who are trying to listen to their gut would be to like maybe journal about it a little bit, like run it through, like talk it through with yourself, and like, and I mean, there's everyone's gonna have a time in their life where they're like, I have to go against the grain of society. I have to go against like what maybe feels
logically
safe.
feels safe, comfortable.
And a lot of times those decisions end up being the best ones that you can make for yourself.
Yeah,
big time. And I think talking it through with yourself is a great way of putting it, and also a reminder that maybe it's not talking it through with other people unless you have people that you know you really well and are really going to be open to whatever those thoughts are, you know. But you don't need naysayers in those moments. Like you really just have to sit with yourself, but also be really truthful with yourself too, you know, and say like, okay, but is this thing going to make me happy, or am I choosing it out of ego, or am I choosing it because I have something to prove, you know, and make sure that you're making a decision from a really well-informed place.
Yeah. And being honest with yourself. Yeah.
Yes. And there's also, before we hop off, one podcaster that I would totally recommend for people who are looking to kind of get inspired in whatever direction it is. And it's Lacey Phillips, Expanded by Lacey Phillips.
Yes.
Love her.
I loved all of her podcast episodes, and I just think that the process that she does is essentially, you know, it's looking at shadow, it's removing blocks, it's finding expanders, which is, you know, people to inspire you, and going through all of those things can kind of unlock whatever it is you're looking for. It's just an interesting way of reframing a lot of different thoughts that we already know and have, you know.
Yeah. I love that podcast. It kind of reminds me of like spiritual Brene Brown. You know
yes,
who I
love.
love
Brene Brown. Yeah,
same.
I've seen her Netflix special like 3 times. I make everybody watch it.
I like can't even tell you. I'm looking at 3 of her books right now. Like I love her.
Great.
I really love how like I feel like spirituality is really having a coming of age. Like a lot of
it's
people
for sure. It's like
are like looking at it with through a different lens now. It's not just kind of like this weird, you know, everyone calls it like the woo-woo world. It's like not like I think people are really starting to understand that it's not this weird like
we're
thing.
connected.
It's an actual thing, and it has a lot of benefits when you tap into, and like spirituality can be anything. It could be someone, you know, it could be you going to church every Sunday, or it could be you like doing a new moon ritual like once a month. It could be anything that feels good, anything that feels like you're connecting with something that makes you feel good.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm really loving how like out of like a lot of the conversations that we've had on the podcast, a lot of our friends, people are starting to tap into that more and find the importance in it. And it's just, I love to see it.
Yeah. It's exciting.
It is exciting and important.
It is. Yes.
And thank goodness.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Big time.
Okay. So, do you know what our Peachy Clean segment is? I'm pretty sure did we email? Yeah. Okay,
yes.
Cool. So I'd love it if we could slide into that Peachy Clean segment. Do you have anything that you'd like to come clean about?
The only thing that just came to mind is I don't watch any reality TV, and I'm terrible at pop culture. Like, I hate it. I just like am not into most pop culture. And I think it's like a lot of it is because it tends to be a very tear down culture. It's very negative. A lot of times.
It is.
Well, I think people just watch those things just to talk shit, just to judge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the best use of your pastime or your free time, I don't think.
No, and if anything, it's the worst because it lowers your vibration. You know, it doesn't make you. It might make you feel immediately better to make fun of somebody in real life or on TV, but it long term does not help anyone.
No.
Yeah. No, you're right. The only like reality, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only reality TV that we really watch is The Bachelor, which I feel like we've been starting to,
well, especially
step
this
away
past
from.
Season.
It was hard to, because we weren't happy with like who they picked to be The Bachelor.
The show kind of disappointed us a bit.
But
you didn't like the main character. There's a problem.
Yeah, but yeah, I think, I mean, that's a very good point.
And every time that we watch, it's like I'll notice myself starting to like make fun or be nasty, and then I'm like, no.
It's so
No.
easy. It's so easy. You know, like we all have, all of a sudden, we're these like armchair panelists judging
Right.
everybody.
I'm just like sitting here in my sweatpants eating whatever.
Right. And you're like, she should
Like-
be in better shape. Look at
Yeah.
her outfit. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's easy to do. And you know, it's bothered me ever since like tabloid days when you would see
Oh, yeah,
Us
for
Weekly,
sure.
like who wore it best, or ew, look at this person getting out of the beach. Her body is disgusting now. And it's like, that makes me so incredibly angry about our
Agreed.
society. It's just disgusting. It's one of like the lowest things that we can do to each other is to create this environment where we're constantly
Shaming
worried and shaming and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it definitely, it affects everybody personally, and especially women.
Yeah.
And I think it's even harder now with social media when everybody's more and more judgy and more, you know, looking at themselves constantly. Like, how often did we used to look at ourselves? We would have photos and pictures occasionally, but they were like, sorry, my light is blinking over.
It's okay.
The message from the gods. But you know, it was not as high res. It was not as detailed. And now everybody's like, we have to have filters because I can see all these freckles that I used to not see.
The filters are insane to
It's
me.
bonkers, and it's hard not to be because you're in a constant state of comparison. And so I think just we have enough of that going on with social media, and as much as that is like a huge integral part of our lives, we don't need it in reality TV. Like I don't need the pop culture.
Yeah.
I'll get my inspo from real people, and you know, my one exception though is I've been binge watching Stylish by Jenna Lyons from like last year or 2 years ago. I just found it.
Okay.
And I love her. And I've always thought she was just like a creative genius. But on the show, also, it's like the one show where everybody's super positive. She's so kind all the time.
Yeah.
She's so thoughtful in her choices and the way that they, you know, approach things. And it's just not a nasty reality show. And so I'm like, okay, if reality was more like this, it wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah, maybe we'll start to like rework and research, like have a revamping of reality TV.
I hope so.
Yeah, because it has the opportunity to be super powerful. Like a lot of there's like even TV shows that like produced TV shows are starting. I think like Freeform and ABC are doing such an incredible job with like bringing like social issues and like to an entertaining space and like having dialogue about like there's just so many.
Yeah, no, it is true.
Happening.
It's very powerful. And even when you think about like some of the makeover shows from the early days too, like, you know, Extreme Home Makeover, Extreme Makeover, I would love to work on a show. Like that's my dream was to have a show that was more my story of how I'm working with people and showing everyone's individual stories and how powerful it can be, because that's like real TV or real life on TV that can be inspiring and powerful and helps people relate too. Because I think when you see other people struggling or other people that you think look like they have it all together and you recognize that everybody goes through different challenges, it's very inspiring and empowering and gives you a chance to kind of relook at yourself in a new way.
Yeah. I think the Fab Five is doing a really good job of that too, and I think we can learn a lot from like how they're about their process.
Yeah,
so we need more of like
quality
and like not going in to like make you fit the status quo, but going in to make you feel like yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. I used to work with Stacey London, and she's great. She's so funny and she's wonderful. And this is another Kismet story too. I know we're going over now, but
we're good. Yeah.
Okay. So 1,000 years ago was when I was still at Kiki de Montparnasse. I would host events, and so the events would always be centered around a talent, and it was always like some romantic talent, like, you know, erotic drawing, or like this psychic approached me and was like, I want to do romantic readings for you and for your you know, I want to do a class on that. And I was like, that sounds amazing. So they offered me a free reading to see like the experience and how her talents. And so one of the things that she said to me, she said a lot of things that were all very spot on. And one of the things she said to me, and this was a year before I quit my job, probably at least, was, I see you doing your own thing. I think you're going to leave like, you know, what you're doing, and it's going to be a totally different life for you. And for some reason, Stacey London is coming up. And she was like, I think you should just like email her and like kind of see what she's doing. And maybe you could do something similar. And I think you should talk to Stacey London. I was like, are you insane? Like, I'm not going to email this random woman who like used to be on whatever TV show was years ago. And I always thought she was great, but you know, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Cut to 2 years later or a year and a half later or something, I left my job. I became an independent stylist, like by accident. And the first job that I got as an assistant stylist for a photo shoot was assisting the stylist for Stacey London on the Today Show. So when I even got the job, like in the email, I didn't even see Stacey London on there. All it said was the Today Show.
So cool.
It was crazy. And so, you know, and it led to me becoming a part of her network later and working with her, but it was just a weird Kismet experience.
I love that.
Yeah. And my point is, on her show, it was very like that, like kind of mean girl thing, but in a funny way. And I was always like, I'm the anti-Stacey London, even though actually she's awesome. And I love her as a woman. And I think she's like incredible. But I like that positivity that's happening now, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. And if I were to do.
Up.
Yeah.
That's such a cool story. I love that. I love when the universe like shows its face. Like when you don't know you're going to walk into, I don't know. Like that. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, I have a million of those.
Yeah, and I think that comes from like if you open yourself up and you like like you were saying, like follow your gut, that more of those happen in life. Like you get little winks from the universe in different ways, and
Yes, and I think being open. I think that's another thing in general that's helpful is being open to opportunities when they do arise, no matter how silly or how small. So, you know, another like thread that I followed when I was young was my dad had been to a wedding before I was moving to New York, and he met this woman and he was like, oh, you live in New York. My daughter is moving to New York. She doesn't know a soul. You know, can you help her like land on her feet? And my dad sends me the information of this woman. I'm like, I'm not going to email this random older woman about like nothing. She works for Bloomberg, you know, like I don't want to work for Bloomberg. I want to work in fashion. Totally different thing. But I was like, let me just meet her because I don't know anybody, and why not? She turns out to be the nicest woman. She's like, I can't do anything for you, but you know who can? My friend Rufus. And he turned out to eventually be my boss later when he launched his own shirt line. And that wasn't even immediate either. At the time, he was working in graphic design, doing something totally different. And I was like, well, you're a wonderful contact to know, a wonderful person. And then we stayed in touch. And later down the line, it became a job, you know? So I think like following those little pings, those little opportunities as they come, and not being embarrassed to or afraid to, or like nothing is too small, you know?
Yeah. I totally agree. And I mean, it's always like shoot your shot, and you never know who's going to have the answers for you. You never know what kind of connection is going to bring an opportunity in, or what kind of connection is going to just like, I mean, even if that person was just going to be like a lovely new friend or a lovely new support system, like you just never know what. Like if someone's being put in your path, like you should definitely explore it.
Yeah. I also want to say that I think sometimes the universe will give us opportunities to say no. So like, and that's a part of like following your gut as well. So like they'll put something, the universe can put something in your path, and it's like, is it for me, or is this an opportunity to say no? Like, is this an opportunity to break a pattern? So
yeah, definitely. And that's again, to quote Lacey Phillips, like a test. Sometimes, you know, it's how much are you listening to yourself versus the outside world, right? And what's being told to you.
100%.
Amazing. Well, now you're all peachy clean.
Yay!
Thank you so much for sharing. But this has been such a lovely conversation. Yes. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. Honestly, so many good like topics were covered. Yeah. Do you want to roll through where people can find and connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. My Instagram is Natty, NATTY _style. So Natty Style with the underscore is pretty much where you can find me everywhere. And then my website is nataliedeclev.com. So it's my full name. Amazing. And that has all my how to work with me and contacts and everything else.
Love it. All of Natalie's goodies will be in the show notes. So definitely head over there, check it out, give her some love. But thank you so much. And then at the end of each episode, we splice in a bye peaches. So will you say bye peaches with us?
Yeah.
Amazing. So I'll count it down. 3, 2, 1. Bye peaches.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Bye peaches.
That
Love
was
it.
amazing.
Yay!